Hi, my name is Greg Moore, and I'm Mill Valley Fire Department Chief retired. I started with the department in 1974 as a volunteer and retired as fire chief in 2011, October of 2011. Today I'm going to give you a tour of our 1924 American LaFrance. The engine was manufactured in Elmira, New York, and delivered to Mill Valley March 6, 1925, and the cost was $12,000. It was stationed at Station 6 in Mill Valley from 1924 until 1960. It was then stored at the Corporation Yard in Mill Valley until the volunteers purchased it in 1971 for $1 from the city. The engine is a water-cooled 6-cylinder, 105 horsepower motor, water-cooled. The pump is rated at 750 GPM, 120 pounds PSI. The most notable fire that this engine was on was probably the Mount Tam fire that burned down in the Mill Valley in 1929. And the last fire that it was on, assigned to, was in 1955. So in 1976, we had this engine, and it had gone to a number of different places. It was stored at Mill Valley Corporation Yard for quite a few years, where unfortunately it wasn't well taken care of. And when the volunteers bought it for $1, they moved it from the Corporation Yard to one of the volunteers' basements. In fact, the engine is named after that volunteer. His name is Ted Homan, and he was a past president and a longtime volunteer, a great guy who took a big interest in this engine. So the engine went from the Corporation Yard to Ted's garage, and it sat there for a couple of years. And then it was moved to 15 Sunnyside, which was an old garage in Mill Valley, 15 Sunnyside Avenue, and parked in the basement. And I guess a few people got involved in it and decided to start tearing it apart to restore it, but they really didn't know what to do with it. So when I started in the fire department, I had 10 years experience in the body and fender shop, so I offered to go ahead and start working on the restoration, and I had a number of key people help me get to that point. And the first thing we needed to do was get the engine running, and the engine was in pieces. The oil pan was on the floor, there was a bunch of parts in it, and I didn't have a clue how to work on this engine. It was just too old. And a captain here named Jim McClure, his dad worked for Magora Gelati for years here in Marin County as a mechanic, and he was the only one that knew how to really get this thing going for us. So he put it all back together for us, got the engine running, and it continues to run today, and it runs great. After we got the engine running, the next thing we wanted to do was paint it. So we went to a body shop that I used to work at before I started in the fire service, and I asked them if we could bring it down there and paint it, and they said absolutely. So we got a bunch of volunteers together for a sanding day, and we sanded the engine, took off what we could take off, and took it down to the shop and painted it this red. And this red isn't the original LaFrance color. It was more of a burgundy, but we wanted to have the same color as the rest of our fleet here in Mill Valley, so we used that code for the color. The next thing we wanted to do was get all the chrome plating done. And the chrome, this was all nickel. All the lights were nickel, the nozzles were nickel, all the caps were nickel. But we wanted to be able to use this engine for parades and let the kids climb on it. We wanted to be able to wash it and maintain it easily, and we couldn't really do that with nickel. So we had everything that was nickel plated except for the nozzles we have in the back. We had everything chromed so we could wash the engine and maintain it easier. And so that's basically how we ended up with chrome on the engine. But it looks nice, and like I said, it's easy to maintain. You notice the front is a brass radiator, which takes lots of polishing, but it's one of the highlights of the engine. And on top of it is a thermometer that the driver can see, because there's no gauge, so he can tell the temperature of the radiator as it rises in the top of the cap. So once we got it painted, we let it set, and we actually painted it, let it set for about 6 months, and we sanded it with 600 grit, a very fine sandpaper, and then polished it out with buffers to get that shine. And it's Emerald paint, it's very hard, very durable. And we painted this in 1976, and it's lasted pretty well considering how much use it gets. The next thing we did is we wanted to get the gold leaf completed, and that was, it took us a long time to try to find somebody that could do an authentic gold leaf restoration of this engine. And we found a person named Roy Supernell, and he was in his early 70s, retired, and we talked to him about doing the engine for us, and he said he'd be happy to. And in fact, he had all the original LaFrance templates for the gold leaf. So he did all the gold leaf for us and did an excellent job, and it's also held up very well. It's genuine gold leaf with a lacquer finish, and it's really, he's done a beautiful job for us. It's a cam Siren. It's working as far as I know. I don't know if it's the original Siren, but it's the Siren that was on the engine when I started the restoration. And it's in working order. Everything works. The engine carries approximately 900 feet at 2.5. And what we have done here is we've put a fake bed in it so we don't carry that much hose. And then we also use it as a place to sit sometimes in parades for people to sit up on. These are the antique nozzles I told you about, the 2.5-inch nozzles. They're nickel. The Y is nickel. And we did not do anything with these, but just polish them. So they're the original nozzles that were on the engine. Again, the nozzles and the hose loads are not the same as they were when the engine was delivered. You know, because so many things changed. We just had to work with the equipment that we had. The ladder is a 35-foot extension ladder. That was restored by a volunteer that's passed away named Swede Jensen. He did a great job on it and took it to his house, spent a couple months working on it and getting it back into the shape that it's in now. The belts are all original for riding tailboard. We have the original helmets and the shirts, that not the original ones, but shirts that we had made that mimic what they wore when this was in service in the 20s. So it's fun to get that together. This is the four-way that we have on. It connects to a hydrant here, and it allows you to lay the line out. And once you have your line out laid dry, you leave a firefighter back at the hydrant, and he can open this up and charge the supply line to the engine. There's a small line back here, again with the original nozzle. It's just 1-inch line. Again, this was original to the engine, and this line has always been there. I know that at some time they had working bundles and other lines on this engine. I can tell, from the old pictures, but this is what we have now. I have another antique 1.5-inch nozzle that came with the engine, and again, that's nickel plated. That's something that we didn't get redone. So the pump is a rotary gear, 750 GPM. 120 PSI. This is where the hard suction would connect. These are the discharge ports. The priming pump for the pump is right here. The fuel tank is on top. The spotlight, which still works, is that's another thing that we've chromed. So this engine's always interesting to start. It has a 3-speed manual transmission. It's chain driven, dual chain driven, has a chain on each side. That the power is transferred to the rear wheels, and all 4 wheels, by the way, are wooden wheels. It's got a spark, a throttle, clutch, brake, gas pedal is in the middle, which is kind of strange. Starter's up on the dash. You use your foot to start it. And the engine runs well. You switch the battery on to both. and bring the throttle up a little bit, move the spark up to the top. And that's it. Runs like a top. Good. So one of the interesting things about this engine is, number one, the wheels are all wood. And again, these are the original templates that they used on these wheels that Roy Supernell did when he did the Gold Leaf. The other thing is it's dual chain drive, and you can see the chain here. It's a 3-speed transmission, direct drive to chains to the rear differential. So the engine really does have a lot of power. It climbs hills very well. It was stationed at Mill Valley Station 6 at 26 Cormorant Avenue for its entire career. And probably over 50% of the calls that this engine ran on were up in the hills on the tight streets in Mill Valley. So it was a perfect engine for that. We have 2 axes, and the opposite side of the pump, again, the intake for the pump that you would connect to the fire hydrant with a hard suction hose on the other side, and 1 more discharge. This chrome wheel opens up the rear pre-connected line on the back, the inch line on the back. This is what charges that line. The pump gauges are in the center for the engineer to control the pressure of the pump. And this is the pump lever. It pumps in neutral, and you move it from, it has capacity on one side, pressure on the other. This is the lever to put it in the pump. To drive, it's kept in the middle.